We have an outstanding panel here to share with you their practical strategies for promoting online student engagement. We have Kevin Davidson, David Monda, Michelle Pacansky-Brock, and Scott Campbell. Each of the panelists will make a short presentation, and following all of the four presentations, we want to allow lots of time for interaction and for your questions. So, to start us off, I wanted to frame the conversation with the importance of online student engagement. Why is it so important? And some of the things we'll be weaving into the presentations are these important outcomes: better student learning outcomes, better retention, better student authentication, which is an important issue for us in online education, and better compliance with accreditation requirements for verifying participation and interaction with instructional content. Let's start off with Kevin Davidson. Kevin.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kevin Davidson, and I am an instructor at Santa Barbara City College and also at Thomas Edison State College. I teach both photography and music. Right now, both of my online courses are in photography. Now, it's appropriate that I should be starting this panel discussion because I'm going to talk about the most basic element of online instruction, and that is text-based communication. The web started basically as a text-based medium. It wasn't intended to hold things like video. And while I'm very excited, we're going to go from my perspective, which is Web 1.0, all the way to Web 2.0 and beyond in this particular discussion today. I'm excited about that. On the other hand, many of us still use text-based communication as our bread and butter when we teach online. Some of us, like me, may be part-time teachers. We don't have the opportunity to change the curriculum. Even if you're using a lot of the more advanced tools that we'll cover today, you're still going to be relying a great deal upon text-based communication. One thing about this, and this is the issue between online teaching and teaching in the classroom, particularly when we're talking about text-based communication, is this. Here, you get to see me. You get to hear my tone of voice, and you get to see my facial expressions. When we're using text online, when you're staring at a screen, just like this slide that I've put up, and by the way, these are very, very straight and text-based to make my point, you don't get any of this feedback. You don't get my body language. For instance, if you see me stand like this, I think that's the way a lot of my students see me as a teacher sometimes. If you see me like this, maybe I look a little more approachable, but how do we get that across when we use text? I've found, since teaching way back in the dinosaur era of 2006, I've found that I need to give more reassurance to my students when I'm using text-based communication. Let me give you a quick example of that. Teaching photography, a common mistake for many of my students is to turn in an image that was shot in full automatic mode when I had asked for manual control on the image. So a student would bring that image to me and I would say, oh, you know, you did a good job, everything's fine, but you shot this in automatic mode, so I really need you to redo it. Now, imagine that without the benefit of any of my expression, or my tone of voice, or whatever you feel from me there. I'm sorry, you shot this in automatic mode, you need to redo it in manual mode. The students, I think, if I type that, are going to see me like this. They're going to see me as a bad, mean authority figure. And it's hard to get around that. It's a difficult thing to do. There's a wide variety of interpretations that you can bring to text that you don't necessarily bring when you're interacting one-on-one. So what I found to make this work better is that I need to give more reassurance. And so what I might type in a situation like that would be, you know, you did a really good job on this image. I really like what you did with this, but we have one little problem, and this is important, because you shot this in automatic mode, and we want you to learn how to use manual mode. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how you redo this image. Now, all right, maybe that's a little over the top, but just to make the point, I can say that very easily here, and I might even say it live, like I'm doing now. Or perhaps, you know, I could possibly, I mean, I don't know how I would do it live, but we have the benefit of that interaction. We don't necessarily have that through text, so you might find that you have to do that. One of my other issues in teaching online in Web 1.0 way back in 2006 are my typing skills. The first online class I taught, I counted up all the emails I wrote in that class, and this was maybe 30 people. And it was very depressing when I found out how many emails I had written or responded to. It was around 700, I think, for that class. Yeah, and 700, some of them, yes, were one-sentence emails, but a lot of them weren't. And in all of these cases, I had to open up the email. I had to think about it a little while. I had to formulate my answer. I had to type it out. I had to hit send. Your typing skills can be very important. And someone watched me type once, and they said, you know, Kevin, you type with 6 fingers. Now, I don't believe that because I know I sometimes use my pinky to hit the return key. So I think I type with 7 fingers, but I've never been a great typist. And I found that there are a couple of issues that we have to deal with there. I proofread. For those of you that have taught online, I'm sure you'll understand this. For those of you that are learning, let me just explain it. But in most situations in online platforms, when you're typing, you'll get a text box, which is where you initially enter your text. Then you'll hit return, and you will usually get a preview of how that is going to look to the student. It isn't always the same. My goal, and what I have learned, is that I proofread when I'm in the text box, I preview it, and then I proofread it again. And I still catch mistakes. It's very useful to do that. Now, to lighten things up a little bit, let me share with you. When I found out that I was going to do this presentation, I started saving my typos. The typo that you're seeing here, yes, that is how I typed this page when I first started. And I thought, hey, why don't I just leave it? Why don't I show how terrible of a typist I am? So I'm going to show you a couple of funny typos that I've made, but that could also have serious consequences. Thank you very much. It was entirely involuntary, I promise you. But I teach a photography class, and we talk in the very first class about how sometimes we're going to have some images that you might find upsetting, and you should talk to the teacher if you feel badly about something. Keep a dialogue going. So now if I miss this typo and I send this out, funny as it is to us, it might also offend some people. And I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. If you send a lot of email systems within the classes that, or within the platforms that we use, tend to be the type, just like your regular email, so that you send an email and you can't take that back and edit it. You can, of course, edit a lot of the other information that you put online, but not that. So if I send out an email blast to the entire class, I can't change this. And I might not even catch it if I don't proofread. Here is the next typo. I promise you these are all true. So can you imagine all of my students and their monitors? I thought about that. And another important point is that spell check didn't catch this. I didn't see the little squiggly line under it. And when you're writing hundreds, thousands of emails, spending a lot of time with your text every single day, it would be easy for you to perhaps miss something like this. I know that that would be something that I could do. So it's important to do that. Now, because right now I teach, the way that my schedule works, I end up teaching sometimes 4 online classes at the same time, and you can imagine if I'm writing 700 emails or whatever for one class, how much typing is involved. And you know, for those of you that have taught online already, you already know that it's not only emails. Emails are a big part of it, but you're going to be doing other writing too. And with my 7 fingers, I thought, is there any way that I could make this any easier for myself? I'm relatively fast, but I have to go back and proofread, as you've just seen. There is something that I do want to make you aware of. Some of you may already know about this program, but I knew about it initially when it first came out, and the reviews on it were pretty bad. It said it was very inaccurate and that actually typing was faster than entering the text. It's a program that was originally called Dragon Naturally Speaking, and that was the name of the program, I believe, for both the Macintosh and Windows platforms. Now it's called Windows Dragon Naturally Speaking and Dragon Dictate. It's not that expensive, and it's not perfect, but I have tried it out, and it is surprisingly good. It will give you some typos, it will mishear you sometimes, but it doesn't do things, or not yet for me, like submit 6 images, if I say submit 6 images. That hasn't happened. And it may not increase your speed overall, but for me, it's much easier than typing, and the wear and tear on me is part of what leads me to be a better communicator. And that's what I'd like to finish with here. As educators, we are communicators. We have to communicate effectively, and that is what will provide us and provide the student with engagement and learning. If we can't get our ideas across, if we do it poorly, then we fail at our jobs. And when you're communicating in a text-based environment, you need to maximize that as much as you possibly can. Using a program like Dragon Dictate, for me, with my terrible typing skills, has allowed me to be more at 100%. And it's allowed me, when we're feeling our best, when we've had our coffee first, then we produce better. I think this is an important thing for all of us to consider. When I got up this morning, I thought, oh man, it's 6 o'clock, where's my coffee? And then I went and had my coffee, and I thought, okay, and this called to mind that the real difference between online teaching, well, one of the major differences between online teaching and face-to-face teaching is that when I teach face-to-face, I have time to prepare. I get up in the morning, I know what time I'm going to be at the class, I have a lesson plan prepared, and I show up there and I do the class. Online, you don't want to roll out of bed in the morning at 6 o'clock and boot up your laptop and start typing emails. I can tell you this. You're going to be grumpy. You might say something that you don't want to say. So prepare yourself just as well as you prepare yourself for a classroom teaching experience as you do when you're teaching online, and particularly in a text-based environment. I think my time is up, and I'd like to introduce our next speaker, David. Thank you.
My name is David Monda, and I teach at Ashford University in the Department of Social Sciences. I teach U.S. government. And today I am going to speak about how to choose effective online communication methods. As our previous speaker had said, communicating in the online environment is very different than communicating in a regular classroom. So on the online environment, you have the advantage of being inconspicuous. People can't actually see you. That can be a positive, but it can also be a negative. In a face-to-face environment, however, folk can sense your body tone. They can sense your facial expressions. They can, decipher certain subconscious images that you're trying to advance. Within the online environment, however, it's usually not possible to know anyone's gender, ethnicity, physical appearances for students, and you cannot assume anything. So sometimes you might assume a student is a male and they're a female, and vice versa, which can, usually have its challenges, because just based on someone's name, sometimes you cannot know if it's male or female. So effective communication actually starts with doing the basics well. Communicate from this person, find out who they are. What I've found from my experience online is the introductory chat rooms. Depends on the online system you're using, but usually you'll have a chat phase or just a live chat area where students can interact, and that's a very nice place to kind of figure out who I'm dealing with online. For instance, May, a student called May, for example, might live in Alabama, have 2 kids. That kind of stuff would come out on, the chat sections of the classroom. And that way you're better able to understand each individual student. Okay. Now, using humor in the online classroom is very important because it eases the tension and relaxes the learning environment. For a lot of students, they may not be very conversant with online learning. They may have had challenges in traditional classrooms and even be more challenged within the online environment. So humor is a very, good tool to use for the online environment. I've used humor in the introductory week messages or in the week summaries, just to kind of lighten up the mood of the classroom and to kind of make all the students feel comfortable and feel that it's a place to, it's a safe place to learn. It's a safe learning environment. However, having said that, humor should not derail the process of serious learning. So it's very important when you're communicating and using humor, right from the get-go, from your introductory messages, from the course outline, that you state for the students what your expectations are of them and what their expectations should be of you. Within a serious online environment and serious online learning, it's not a Facebook page, it's not a MySpace page. So they cannot use abbreviations, unsubstantiated messages or sort of Facebook style communication, within the online classroom. And that's very important to state right at the get-go. Communication methods, made it fairly simple. The 4 F's: be fair, firm, fun, and flexible. Fairness in the online environment will come with consistency in course outlines and course expectations. So you cannot initially say that you expect the students to participate once a week on the discussion board and then midway through the classroom say, you know what, guys, I've changed the rules on you, so now you have to participate twice or 3 times. It just doesn't work. It's very important. And it's also important to communicate that in terms of firmness and fairness within your course outline. What exactly are your expectations? So that should there be any confusion later within the online learning environment, you can always go back to your course outline and say, if you read your course outline, it clearly states that this is my expectation. And in certain cases, it will save you legal challenges. It will save you a lot of trouble and pain within the administration, because students do sometimes sue online instructors for some of this negligence or oversight. So it can sometimes be look like it's a simple issue, but it's very, very, very important. Communication methods, feedback, give grades and substantive feedback to students on their assignment on a regular schedule each week. Again, this should be clearly stated on your course outline on day one of the class. So mention to students that, for instance, if it's week one, if assignments are turned in on day 7, I'm assuming, for instance, in this case, it would be a Sunday, then their expectation of you as the instructor is to turn back the assignments in by, say, Wednesday or day 3 of the next week. And that should, again, be clearly stated on the course outline. And it's very important because, again, within the online environment, students have very different experiences and very different angst, and therefore, in most cases, they really want to do well. They really, really want to do well, and that's why the feedback follow-up is very important. Always provide positives in your feedback to students, no matter how bad their assignments are. And sometimes this is a challenge because there's just some students that just didn't try. I have a case in one of my current classes where it just seems a student panics and an assignment is due, and they'll go on the internet and copy and paste right off of Google and turn an assignment in. So you do tend to have those kind of situations. So just be very conscious of that. And in conclusion, I'd just like to say again that it's very important to have humor in the classroom. Remember the 4 Fs, being firm, fair, fun, and flexible. I'd just like to make a quick note in terms of flexibility. Flexibility, in my experiences online, needs to cater for extraneous circumstances. So, for instance, I had a case recently in Missouri. One of my students online was affected by the tornadoes out there, and just didn't have access to a computer. Their internet systems were down, and this was just a very genuine situation. Those kind of situations are, what I would consider situations where you'd need to be flexible. In the case of a student, for instance, who just panicked and copied and pasted an assignment from Google just to turn it in and say, I turned in an assignment, either because they didn't care, they were being lazy, or, they were out partying and decided that, assignment is late. That's just not a situation to be flexible in. You have to be very firm, not only for the sake of the integrity of your teaching online, but also in fairness to those students that turn their assignments in on time. And providing students regular and scheduled feedback. One of the options I've afforded students in my classes is formative feedback. So if we have an assignment, say a final paper, they can send me a draft, and I can give them formative feedback on that. And then lastly, ask for help if you run into any trouble. Exchange information with participants at this conference. My information will be readily available if you have any questions about challenging situations that you might run into. And also communicate with the administration. Always be in touch with the administration in terms of supporting your students online. Thank you.
By the way, that's not your phone, right? I just want everyone out there to know that. That's your timer to keep us on task, just so you know. Because that's my ringer on my phone. Okay, hi everyone. I'm not going to take the time to introduce myself. I think most of you may have been in the general session this morning, so you know a little bit about me. But I'm going to talk to you today. I'm going to share a simple what I think is a simple strategy to increase student engagement in online classes. And I've titled this The Human Touch. It really matters, and it really can be achieved in a variety of ways online. Some of our two previous speakers have talked a little bit about some of the challenges of text-based communications, and I completely concur with everything that they said and the strategies that they've provided. You may feel like maybe you want to integrate a little bit of video, and maybe that could be some video of you. And that's something that I'm going to share with you, how I've done that in my class. Before I do that, I wanted to share a real quick story about what prompted me to do this. It was when I was teaching online, and I was attending a graduation ceremony, watching my students walk across the stage, which is really the best moment, well, one of the best moments, I think, for being a faculty member. You feel that pride, that excitement, and you want to go up afterwards and congratulate your students. Well, I was hearing names that I knew, but I wasn't recognizing their faces, and that bothered me a lot as a teacher. And it also dawned upon me that they're not going to know me either. I mean, they have a picture of me on my syllabus, but really they're not going to know who I am. And I know that there's a lot about that type of connection that goes into learning, teaching and learning, right? The kinds of relationships that occur when you run into a student at the grocery store. And that can all be part of online learning if, well, not for all students, but you really do matter. Your presence, your human presence really does matter in an online class. I do believe that. So what I started doing was integrating simple weekly video announcements into my online classes. I don't have a background in video creation or video editing, trust me. And I was already integrating weekly text-based announcements. When a new learning unit launched, the text-based announcement would welcome the students, introduce the unit, talk about the last unit, make some ties between the content, mention some current events maybe that are basically just a launch for the unit. So what I started doing was taking those text-based announcements and simply recording them as video announcements. I already had what I wanted to say, right? So I'd write it, and then I would simply record myself with my webcam. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how I did that. Well, let me just share a little bit now. So what I did was I would go basically into YouTube or another video sharing site. It doesn't have to be YouTube, and open up my transcript on my screen and open up my YouTube window, click the record from webcam. I had a webcam in my laptop. That's all I was using, and recorded right into YouTube, saved it, and then grab the embed code. And if you don't know what embedding means, it means putting basically a picture of the content in your online class rather than a link. If you put a link, you may think that's great. They're still going to get the video. But if you're linking them out to YouTube, do you think they're going to come back all the time? So embedding is a really effective strategy for using video in your classes, as well as other types of HTML content. Recently, an online instructor in one of my @1 classes, as we were getting used to using video and talking about how it changes the dynamic of a learner, I think it was a she who shared, she said she had a student who was shocked to find out that there was a real teacher teaching her class. Students really respond to this strategy. They respond very, very well. And that type of response really keeps you motivated as an online teacher to keep doing it. So I think that's important to note. And when you start to get great feedback like this, and you'll see it start to come pretty fast. This is a comment from one of my students at the end of a semester. The best part of the class was seeing your face pop up every week. You motivate them when they see you. You do. And it also makes it easier to deliver feedback that maybe the class didn't do so well on exam, and you want to address that as a group. It's going to come across way better in a video than in text. These are some student survey results from a survey I did in 2008. I surveyed 101 of my online students, and I had an 88% response rate. 98% of them strongly agreed that the video communications from me increased the sense that I was present in their learning experience. And this is a study from Santa Barbara City College conducted or led by Doug Hirsch, who's in the audience right now. Hello, Doug. This study was quite interesting. I was really excited to see this come out because it was kind of validating a lot of the things that I was learning also. And in this study, there were 2 groups of students who were learning in Moodle online, and one of the Moodle instances included video announcements or messages, modules from their instructor, as well as other types of tools. That wasn't the only thing included in that. And at the end of the term, there's a comparison between the 2 student groups, and the one learning in the human presence model had a 10% increase in class completion rate. So the effective video practice, again, or effective practice that I'm sharing here again, is to replace those text announcements that you're doing every week, or that you should be doing every week or more frequently anyway, in your online class with a video announcement. To do so, it requires a script, which is the written text. It requires a webcam. You could also use something like a flash or a flip video, or even a cell phone video. The transfer may be more complicated if you're trying to do it mobilely, though. And I use my webcam, and a free account on YouTube works just fine. A quiet place. You should be out of your pajamas, which is usually the hardest part for me. With decent front lighting, and that's something that I find a lot of people don't know when they're using webcams, and you're in silhouette on the screen. So if you have a little bit of front lighting coming from behind your screen, I actually do it in front of a window with a curtain drawn, it allows for you to be illuminated effectively. And it's really great to keep those weekly announcements fresh, and I get this comment a lot from my students, many of you who have come through my @1 classes, who say, oh my gosh, those video announcements were great. And what I mean by fresh is it's really tempting to just repurpose them every semester, right? And you could do that, but you need to view this as an opportunity to make references to your students in class, right? Use their names. Talk about who did a great job last week. Promote their excellent work, motivate them. And when they realize that you're not repurposing that content, and that it's fresh, that's when I think the engagement really starts to cook. Oh, and most importantly, I think, don't worry about being perfect. They want you. So if you stumble and say, I say all the time, they don't care, because it's me, and they want to see me, and they want to hear me. And I find that as professors, we are so hypercritical, and we think those videos have to be perfect. They do not. And also be clear and accessible. When you embed that video, tell them how long it is before they click on it. That's a really good rule of thumb. And also include the transcript. Don't get rid of it. Share it with them, because there will be students who will need to read it instead, and there will also be students who want to read it instead, right? Maybe they're somewhere where it's just not a good environment to listen to a video at the time. Is this open already, the video, or should I click on it? This is a quick video. I'm just going to show you a few seconds of what one looks like.
Hello and welcome to week 2 of building online community with social media. I'd like to take some time here to summarize and reflect on some important elements of our first week of community building and warm you up for week 2. By now, I hope you have each found at least one person in our class who shares something with you. Perhaps you have the same level of online teaching experience, teach a similar discipline, work nearby, have lived in a common location, or have similar personal experiences. Getting connected on a personal level to your classmates is an important step in building community, and the myth-fact discussion.
Okay, so that's what that looks like. And you can find that on YouTube if you want. If you do share something on YouTube, you don't have to make it public to everyone. You can use the share only with those who have the link option. It's in the privacy or security settings, and that way only your students are going to find it. So in other words, it won't come up in a Google search or in a YouTube search, which I know usually makes people happier if you're doing this, or more comfortable to try it. And I've created a how-to guide how to do this, and I have shared it with a Creative Commons license, and you can find it in 2 places, within the portal for the conference and also on my blog at mpbreflections.blogspot.com. Just click on the Educator Guides tab and you'll find it there. And that is it, folks.
Good late morning, everyone. Okay, I'm gonna do my own timer too. Not that I don't enjoy the music, but just for my own organization. So, as you can see, I'm Scott Campbell. I'm with National University. My background is I've been teaching online classes for about 7 years now, and I did some instructional design before that. So I kind of come at this from a different approach, and my master's degree was in video. So like Michelle, well, as of a few years ago, I didn't have much background in video, but I'm really finding out how we can really apply it to the academic setting, and I think with some success. And I'll talk a little bit more about the video aspect of that in a minute. And just so you know, I don't really believe in handouts too much, because usually when you give them, they either most likely end up in the recycle bin, or even worse, they end up at the trash. So my email is up there, so if you have any questions, the video I'm going to show you is public access on YouTube, so you can watch it. But if you have any other questions, just email me. Okay. With that said, okay. So my section is about best practices in creating learning objects, essentially to engage multiple learning styles. I kind of look at this not only as multiple learning styles, but supplemental learning styles. I found this out recently where, you know, I'm one of those believers of not putting a ton of text on a slide and then talking, because you're either saying what's already written up there, or you're saying something different, and either way I'm very confused, and I just want you to stop one medium so I can take it in, and I can't just close my eyes and listen, or plug my ears and look. So anyway, so the reason I'm even bringing this up is because at one point recently I said, well, I'm not going to read what's up on the slide, and someone actually said, no, I want you to read it. And I thought, okay, well, maybe they do want this. Maybe they do want you to sort of supplement or enhance the experience for people, so they can understand it better, or again, in a new way. So let's talk about some of the main things. I want to talk about what is a learning object, at least what my definition is, and it could be vastly different from what yours definition is, why we would use one, the practical uses for them, some common examples, and brief demonstration. It already sounds like I've got a lot to cover in a short amount of time, so let's move on. Okay, so the first part is a description and the rationale. So what is a learning object? To me, a learning object is something that is instructor generated in this case, so it's created by the individual who's kind of leading or guiding the class. And it's also multimedia based, so it's not just necessarily audio, although it can be, but it also has other elements in it. It could be video and audio, and that could be moving images, it could be still images, so a lot of different varieties, so different ways to approach it. Also, why use a learning object? Well, again, I talked a little bit about this idea of the multiple learning styles, and again, I think about it as enhancement. In other words, I kind of just, this may sound overly obvious, but I try to go back to the basic idea of what is going to help them learn, okay? Is it going to help them learn to do this? And if the answer is yes, and it won't kill me in the process to do it, I'm going to do it. Also, it provides choices. It gives them an opportunity to engage with the content in a variety of different ways, because again, we all like flexibility, which is the next one, and mobility. I mean, how many of us are now using either our iPad or our smartphones or whatever device we have to be able to engage with this content? So I think that's an important thing, especially now and in the near future. Okay, also let's talk about the application and examples. Sorry, just checking my time here. Okay, yeah, I got plenty of time. Okay, practical uses in your course. First off, you know, I teach almost exclusively online, and like Michelle, I like to use a lot of announcements. Actually tried a different approach where it's almost daily announcements, which is mainly text-based, but I really love the idea of this first impression. Okay, what is the first impression they get? And almost always it's going to be that welcome announcement, okay? And what better way to do it, again, as Michelle was talking about, and I also believe, is using some sort of video, ideally your face, and not a 20-minute talking head video, because that's just going to bore everybody. Not the band, I mean just you, the individual. But you can also use them in assignments. And a lot of this is really fun because there's different creative ways of thinking about it. I mean, it's really endless in terms of how you want to do it. One of the other things I do is lecture and review. So, for example, I'm still struggling with this idea of lecture. I see some people put a PowerPoint slideshow alone, just text, in their online class, and they call that a lecture. I don't get it. I mean, to me, it's what's the difference between that and a handout? It's text-based. So I think about it from the audio component, the more interactive and multimedia component. Also, I want to cover some common examples, and we'll do this narrated slideshow and the audio recording. The audio recording, I don't really have time to show the demo, if I even had one, but okay, so the next one is creating a learning object. So the creation of a learning object, essentially the tools you need, obviously software. PowerPoint is probably the standard, I still think, although a lot of people are using Keynote. But the thing about PowerPoint that is nice is it's cross-platform. Most people have it, but again, if you're a hardcore Mac person, and you don't want to have anything to do with anything Microsoft, then maybe you would go with Keynote. And I've never really used it much, but I hear it's a great product. You need, of course, basic recording devices. Most people have recording stuff built in, not only the camera but the microphone, so you're probably set on that. But if you don't, you might want to get that, and also look into headset. I would recommend a USB plug-in headset versus just the line connection, I think it's called. It's a little better quality. Also creating an audio file with the tools, Audacity. How many of you already know of Audacity? Most of you. Okay, so this isn't much new news to most of you. But again, it's got the two important components in my book. It's free and it's cross-platform. I mean, you can't lose. Okay, also the hardware, again, so many of these smartphones are used, you can download software and you can record your audio files that way. In fact, we're just talking about Flip Video. I mean, the company, I think it was Cisco that bought Flip Video, not long ago realized that this is a dying product because everybody can record video on their smartphone, and almost everybody has a smartphone. So again, the technology is changing, but again, you probably already have the equipment, but if not, it's relatively inexpensive to get. Okay, so building and sharing content. So I want to just show you a quick video demonstration, and what I did is I used, how many of you know Camtasia? Okay, so a fair amount of you, okay. I'm surprised you're here. Thank you. Okay, so anyway, let me show you this quick video I created using Camtasia, but essentially shows you how you can create a narrated slideshow in PowerPoint to use in your online class. Oh.
A pretty simple process. Of course, the first thing you'll need is an application, and for this demo, I'm going to use PowerPoint. So I've already got a file open, so I'm going to expand it. Now, if you don't have one, obviously you need to create something, and once you're done creating it, of course, you want to save it, and then we can start doing the recording. Okay, so when you're here, there's different ways depending on what version you have. I can click on Slideshow, Record Slideshow, or for the latest versions of Office, you can click here on this little tab, and there's an icon to record the show. So before I do that, I've already got my text here on my title slide, but also what I have down here is a note. And if you have anything that you want to make sure you mention, either verbatim, word for word, or just a reminder that's not already on the slide, you can put that there, and it's really helpful, and I'll show you about that in a minute. So if you're ready to start recording, which I am, I will click on the Record Slideshow icon. And then it opens up this window, and what I see here on the left is the main slide, which is the one I'm on. And below it, I can see the actual note I put in, which just says, hello, welcome to COM 100, Introduction to Mass Communication, which is a class I use this in frequently. And then to the right is the next slide. So that way, if you're not sure, you don't want to have any surprises, you'll know exactly what's going to happen because the next slide is previewed over here. Below it, you'll see the counter. Now, by default, when you click on this, it starts recording right away, so you better be ready. However, if you're not ready, or if you just make a mistake or something, you can always click on pause right here, and this will stop the recording, which is really nice. Now, if you want to just pause to kind of catch your breath, refresh, regroup, and then continue on, you would just click play again, or you can click on this counterclockwise arrow, and it goes back to 0, and you would essentially start over. And it's just on this slide, so you're not going to erase the whole thing. So you can start up again, which I've done, and you can see the timer started over as well. So once I'm at the point where I'm happy with what I have, I can simply click on the right arrow here below the main slide, and it takes me to the second slide. And so I continue to do the narration. Again, I can pause and start over, or just pause and continue whenever I'm ready. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and just click pause altogether because I'm done. And then I'm going to go up to where it says exit show, which I will do. And it says the total slideshow is 25 seconds and wants to know if I'm going to save my slide timings, and I do. And if you don't know what that means, essentially it just means it's saving the timings in between each slide, or the transitions. Okay, so I've completed the narration. I'm going to save my file, and now I'm really interested to see if it actually works. So I will go down here to the icon, and one thing I want to point out real quick is before I start listening to it, you'll see these little speaker icons. Now, when you go to present, you won't see that. So it's just there letting you know that there's audio. And so I want to go into slideshow mode, and it goes back to 0, and you would essentially start over. And it's just on this slide. Okay, so as you can see that works. So my suggestion, though, is to listen to it in its entirety, because sometimes it crops off and ends early or starts a little late. So you just want to make sure all the content is there. So once you feel good about it, you go ahead and save your file, and you are good to go.
Okay. Trying to get back to where I was. Okay. Okay, so I know Michelle, are we almost done? I got like 11 and a half. Okay. So again, embedding is a really good way to do this. Camtasia is a really great tool. It's, you know, my process is to essentially record my audio narrations and then play them back and do screen capture with Camtasia. It's a bit of a clunky process, so if anyone has a better workaround, I'd love to hear it. But to record the screens and then upload in Camtasia, if you don't already know, you can go straight to export up to YouTube, which is really nice. And then again, it gives you that great embed code, which you can just copy and paste into your online class, and boom, voila, I've done a lot of my lectures and screen capture type stuff in there. Okay, and let's see. Okay, so real quick, these are some of the comments I got from my students with the audio. Just the simple, all I did was I'll try not to, I'll speak briefly because you're reading. All I did was I just essentially outlined the chapters, highlighted them, and just narrated the slides. So very basic, I thought, but okay. All right, I assume you've all read that. And just another statistic about attrition. The one thing I found that when I used this feature, when I taught the rate of attrition, which seems opposite to me. To me, a rate of attrition means the people that drop. But essentially, more people stayed in my class than other people that did not use this feature. So I think it helped. So, okay, and that's it. Thank you very much.
At this time, we would invite you to come up to the microphone and interact with the panelists, ask questions. If you have some techniques that you'd like to share for engaging your students, interacting with your students, or questions you might have. Okay, we have Tara is up.
Well, hi. Dr. Henny and I'm an instructional designer, and I work with her, and we put together some tutorials for our teachers and students. So just as Michelle talked about the YouTubes, so we have a Camtasia that's captioned if you guys want to use it, and if you flip your name tags over, it's the first tiny URL. You can get to that tutorial. So it's accessible, and it'll teach your students how to do that, and as well for instructors that are doing that. So I think that's great that we're teaching teachers to do that. And then for the Camtasia, we like to create scripts, and then you can copy and paste that in your the slide notes, so that when you go into Camtasia, you can actually sync the captions. It's a tool. You can do sync captions, and so you can just copy and paste what you've already done in your script, and then it'll ask you to click the last word that was said, and it'll sync so if I'm saying, I like food, and food was just said on the audio when you're listening to the playback, you click food because you want the caption to end there, and then a new sentence will come up. Bean burritos are my favorite, and then you click favorite because that's the word you said in that scene. So we've been doing a lot of work with that, working with Dr. Henny. So those are my tips, and it was great. Thanks.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, any other volunteers come up, share your tips, ask questions? Michelle, did you want to mention about your handout that you had posted?
Yeah, I did mention it at the end. It's on my blog, and it's
Okay.
in the portal. And if you didn't get my blog, you can ask me. I'm happy to share it.
Okay, we're all about engagement.
I'll help you engage.
Thank you.
I had a couple of things I wanted to just comment on. I think I'd be concerned about humor. That was a comment that was made several times, and I'm someone who likes to make humorous remarks and maybe even a little sarcastic or sardonic. And when you're dealing with a wide audience, I think you just have to be careful. And I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I think we need to create a relaxed environment. But humor, what is humorous to one person just simply is just not perceived as very funny to others. And so that's something that, as a teacher for many, many years, I tend to hold back on. A second thing, my question was, in terms of, clearly what I've learned was the importance of your engagement, and I was very impressed with your use of the video, but I've also seen the oral engagement. Do you think, so I'm definitely going to have some oral engagement on my online classes. Do you think the addition of the video is worth the additional effort? Do we get more bang for the buck, or do we get the biggest bang for our buck with just having the audio presence, and then we get an additional but not a significant addition of having the video presence? That was a question I had.
I can respond. I did a little research
Come to the
on
mic
that.
if you want to respond, if you'll come to the mic.
Did you,
But go ahead.
okay.
This is Scott.
And then I wanted to,
We're having an engagement
Oh,
around the
okay.
microphone. This is nice.
I said a real quick comment, and I was like you, I thought, well, what's the difference between audio and video and those kind of announcements, because you really are not providing any extra information. And I was almost astounded at the difference in connecting the students and the amount of feedback and all of that just by adding my face.
So I want to make sure I understand. I definitely understand that there's a tremendous difference between simply having PowerPoint text and addition of audio. I'm sold. I want to know if you feel that going from audio and then to video is worth that additional effort. And I guess you're saying, and you
I
feel-
actually was doing audio before I did video.
Yeah,
So
well-
my work, I started with text, actually. I didn't tell the complete truth. And I was already doing audio, and then I added the video really when I realized that my students weren't recognizing me. And I found that from the student feedback, it did make a significant difference. But, I don't think that video is necessary for everything. I think that it depends on what it is that you're doing. For example, when I'm sharing a lecture type module, I think that the content is more important for them to see than my face. And so I'll have a voice narrated over the content, because I think that's what's more important for them to see. So, but, I think about the class experience overall versus, little chunks. So, I don't know.
I was thinking, well, I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to respond to the issue of humor. Your point is well taken. But I also mentioned humor should not take away from serious learning engagement.
Sure.
That was the bottom line. And when we're speaking about humor, I'd also like to clarify, you're not making jokes in your classroom, at least I don't, because one person's funny is another person's dumb. So humor could just be as simple as, like on your PowerPoint presentation, having like an animal on a laptop. Just
That's
make
right.
it different than script.
So maybe lightheartedness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I'd just like to, mention a quick comment specific to my discipline. Audio and picture images, specifically in what I teach, like U.S. government, sometimes tends to work negatively for my learning instruction because, for instance, obviously I'm a black person, I'm African American or African, okay? I'm black, okay? So when we're speaking about issues in U.S. history, by virtue of students knowing that, it really, it tends to make their responses very measured, and many times they'll say things not to offend me rather than engaging in the classroom. So it's really a double-edged sword, at least from my sort of discipline, because they may not say what they feel, because they don't want to upset you as an instructor, they don't want to seem inappropriate, but sometimes it really hurts the learning experience.
I had made a comment, I asked a question, now I'm going to make a suggestion, then I'll be done. I'm a newcomer, a newbie to online education, and quite frankly, having taught for 27 years face-to-face, not as engaged. But then I saw, and I'm sure you all have favorite classes, but if you want to see something fantastic, let me recommend justiceharvard.org. It is by a guy named philosopher Sandel, and it is filming him and each individual episodes, and I have just become addicted to this. I have never seen anything this great. I know someone who goes to that school, and this is the most popular class. They have 1,000 kids who want to get into this undergraduate class. So I'll just give it to you again, justiceharvard.org, not just as a great class, but just the sense of, I could not believe they could make something so good online, and that I could learn so much in my own subject. So by Sandel. So that's my tip.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
So I wanted to first commend two of the presenters put data up supporting their points. One had the retention rate improvement by using it, and then Michelle, was it Michelle, I think, that had a couple of studies that I think it's important that we measure what we do and whether it's effective or not. And so I think that's great. And there's a lot of sort of folklore about what works, but I think it's better to measure it. And in that light, David, you are obviously a black man.
I just noticed, right?
So I want to tell this. I wanted to tell this joke. No. But I do want to make a point, David. You're one of two, obviously, black men in the room. This is a white audience. We're a bunch of white people here, for the most part. And I wonder about the equity issues around our implementation of online education. I wonder if we're bringing everybody up. I come from a world where you use technology to solve problems. I've only been in education for a few years. And I see us using technology in ways that may be further subordinating some populations. And I wonder how each of you might react to that concern.
I think that there's something very interesting happening right now with our shift to mobile. And I read an article not too long ago that talked about who has access to the internet via smartphones. And I'm talking about the populations that are now looking to smartphones for their primary internet access point. They are the populations who have not been able to afford internet at home. And so sometimes we frame smartphones as tools that the privileged people have, and that's absolutely not what's happening. It's really kind of subverting our idea of the digital divide. And it's also really exciting to me because now we're starting to see internet access in the hands of people who have not had access to it previously, but it also plays a role in our conversation and thinking critically about how to learn effectively through this, right? So I think that's a wonderful topic, and that's just one little point that I've noticed recently that I thought was really interesting because it kind of shifts the paradigm a little bit.
Looks like we have time for one more question.
Mine's going to be very quick.
Yeah.
Number one, I just have a comment about the video versus audio, and brain research shows video is by far how we learn the best. So that's a side comment. The real reason I'm up here is because I'm not sure how to do embedded versus a link on YouTube. So if you could
It's in the
explain.
how-to guide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
And
looks like,
if-
I think we'll squeeze one
Brain
more in.
Rules is a great book. Brain Rules by John Medina. It talks about that.
Scott,
Yeah.
what version of Camtasia were you using?
Ooh. I think it's the most current version. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just got it from my university about within the last 6 months. So I would think
Okay.
it's the
People are saying 7.
7? Okay.
And the reason why I asked that is then she mentioned the captioning and the timing, and I have done that in the past, and it's very time consuming. But I understand, somebody told me that with the latest version, whatever number that is, that they've kind of, not exactly, but kind of added Dragon, naturally speaking, to help do your captioning at the same time. So is that, have you used that?
We have, and Dave Giberson, who is one of the instructional designers. That's a great point. With the new Camtasia, the upgrades, Dave Giberson. So if you go to sdccdonline.net, Dr. Honey's put together a website for our faculty, and then we have all these tutorials that Dave has put together just on captioning alone. And so he talks about how you can get Camtasia to learn your voice, and then and how to use the Dragon that's built into Camtasia. But for me, we all have our different styles of putting together our classes, and I love the scripts because I'm like Michelle. I say a lot, and like my mom keeps telling me that I need to work on that. And so if I type a script and then I have the dual monitors, or I print it out. And then Micah just showed me there's a new app where you can actually create another monitor on your iPad. So you can have a script somewhere else and then be going, and then if you just do F9 on Camtasia, it can pause it. So you can read your line, F9, and then F9 again, say it, F9, read the other line. So for me, that's nice because I can really animate, and I can really speak to my students, and just instead of just talking all monotone. Because if we can bring some theater and some life to our online classes, then we're going to really engage and energize our students. That's what we've tried to do.
Wrap-up. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Oh.
Scott wants the last words.
I'll just say one quick thing. There's no better tool to help you become a better speaker than to have to listen to yourself. Because you'd be amazed how many times you make little flubs and things like that.
And if you are employed at a California community college, you can go to College Buys, Google College Buys, and they are offering Dragon, I think, at a 50% discounted rate.
Wow.
It's through the Foundation for the California Community Colleges.
Okay. Thank you very much. Great session.